My name is Sean Stark, and I am a 35-ish year martial artist. I've studied a lot of different things, trained in a lot of different things, and primarily focused for about 25 years in Penchak Silat primarily. I've also done some Kali and Eskrima, quite a bit of that as well. I've sort of consistently done that for a similar length of time. But I first started off in Kung Fu, and I've done Tai Chi, and I've done Judo, and I've done Aikido, and so various forms of things, and a multitude of different Penchak Silat systems. Primarily, though, Sturlock, Pamor, and I spent a little bit of time in Jati Wasesa. There's a lot of different things that I've done, and then also some Kun Tao, which was more like it's a little bit similar to Gocho Kun out of the Philippines. It was a southern white crane system, a little bit hard, which was different for me because I was coming from softer kung fu systems, and then I went and kind of with the same guy was kind of learning the Inasanto blend of Kali and JKD and different things. So I've had a long trajectory of different things, and when I say that I've studied them, for the most part, that would be many years of each. The Pamor, all of that by way of introduction. So, fast forward some years, and I decided to create a martial art. And the purpose of that was not to be some, master on the mountain, head guy kind of thing, as much as to sort of bring some of the ideas together, and furthermore to weed some things out, because I while I'm grateful for everything that was shared with me, I didn't find much of it to fit with my personal goals. So my personal goals, to be clear, then were like, primarily I was interested in. I've always imagined martial arts as being primarily martial, and then the expression of the martial is artistic. So for me, the concept of a martial art as being primarily art, as you often see in like Tai Chi, is not really where my mindset was. My mindset has always been on efficacy first, and because of the skill and the level of ability that you can get through efficacy, it becomes beautiful. That's sort of my picture of what is meant by martial arts. I think that's all become distorted, and it's all just a little bit it's off center. It's not even slightly off center. It's off center, and so that is why I decided to build something, and I have to say it wasn't it was not an easy journey, because you're frowned upon by people who consider themselves traditionalists. They may jeer at you and carry on about it, but my driving force was never wide acceptance. My driving force was my own abilities, and the more that I tested things, and the more that I learned about myself, and the more that I shared what I knew and learned and watched people struggle with and have difficulty applying, and all of that sort of framed a almost a constant modification of what I taught. And so the system as it stands today is not the system as it started. There are some very core things that have moved with it, but it is not the same thing. And the emphasis hasn't really changed that much. But what has changed is, presentation a lot of times, how things are presented, because a lot of times presentation affects perception, and perception, how things are perceived, it becomes what they are, whether you want that to be true or not. And so I started, this sort of constant growth and learning process that has evolved. And, some of the guys that have trained with me for, 20 years. So there are very few of them. I've never gifted people for their certifications. There are exactly 3 instructors that have ever been certified by me, and that's because I didn't want it to be watered down, and it isn't not a complicated system, but it does require effort and training. And when I practice myself from the time my young kids went to bed, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, not every day, but a lot of days, plus teaching, plus writing about it, plus making videos to help people learn and all that. Maybe the standard is too high, but the expectation for me is that people will I know what people are capable of. And so when you have an understanding of what people are capable of versus what they output, then there's no reason for me to accept that as a standard. So I've never gifted people their ranks, titles, certifications, whatever you want to call it, and there aren't many that have them. And the purpose of me, coming on here today and just sort of laying all that out is really just so that when you look at what I'm doing, it's very easy to pick it apart and to be critical of everything about it, and to think that that doesn't make sense, that would never work. But the truth is, most of it has worked, and I've applied it against kickboxers, younger, faster kickboxers. I'm 54 now, and I'm talking like just a few years ago, I was applying it against 20-somethings, semi-pro and amateur fighters, but younger guys, and and at an MMA school where they were also then. We would have times where they would apply, have the ability to apply their takedowns and whatever. So anyway, what I'm kind of driving at is that value is very easy to you can watch a video and not understand the context or not understand the total, and be very critical of that. And I would just encourage you, it's your choice, I don't care really, but it's your choice, right, to view things and to look at them as not the sum of the parts, because the way the system is actually put together is a system of parts. There is no there are moments where you see what I call streams of parts. You put them together, but they're based on responses that people could provide. Now, they are not pre-planned. They are just used as a vision of what's possible. So when you fight somebody and, sparring or whatever, 75% of it will never happen. That isn't the point. A lot of that has to do with how a fight progresses, how what the intensity is, what the range is. Do you maintain a friendly sparring atmosphere versus a more intense, situation where proximities aren't sort of fixed, moving back and forth? There are a lot of different variables when you talk about efficacy of something. And so, applying them on the street is different than applying it in any kind of a sparring situation, especially, if you start figuring in unknowns like weapons and whatever. I mean, the list is long. And I think that it's important to understand that when you're looking at PSP, the purpose was to create a responsive system of and a system in the truest sense, like by position, by movement, and not by outcome. So that's a little different than a lot of martial arts. A lot of martial arts are like fixated on this outcome thing. I'm not really fixated on that. I'm fixated on ratios of movement. If you attack me, I'm going to have a response. You're going to do something else immediately, and I'm going to do something else immediately. And if I'm in relationship with you, our responses and reactions, actions will feed off of each other. Now, that doesn't mean it is always the case that will occur. For example, we could both throw a hook punch simultaneously, and that would be in relationship to what we saw, but not in relationship to what is happening. So, that's a little bit more fight theory, but the idea of what I have built for PSP is that you take this part and you take this part and you take this part, and you, with those three parts, just as an example, not a specific thing, those three parts work together, and it doesn't matter what three parts. What matters is that you've studied all those three parts, you've trained all those three parts, and those three parts exist within the system. So the goal is to get you to be adaptable, be responsive, or I prefer action versus reaction. So my goal would be to be offensive as much as possible, because you're the one then setting the pace, setting the timing, and determining to some extent outcomes. Because kind of like chess, the more that you lead, the more that you control the next potential move. And so, if I strike at your face, for example, there's going to be people that argue with me, but I can tell you that if I strike from a position to a specific position on your face, you are more likely to have a certain type of response. Excuse me, I've been battling a cold here for about a month. So, by knowing that, I can also then be relatively, not 100%, not 90%, 75% confident that you're going to have some kind of response that I'm aware of. And that helps then for me to drive the situation in a way that I understand. And that's important. The goal is to reduce chaos. So the way then to look at PSP then is not to look at it as a bunch of techniques, but to look at it as a bunch of relationships, a bunch of positions, a bunch of movements that can be strung together. I think most people fail to understand PSP because they look at it like techniques, and that's just not what it is. The goal here is to understand where you could end up in a battle, where you could end up, and also to control where you go next. Anyway, so I encourage you to sort of watch these videos, and I know there's no context for how they're being dropped. The goal for me is just to put the content out there. So I'm basically doing it in the easiest way possible, and that is whatever's next in the list. I'm basically publishing. There are some things I'm holding back, and it's not to be weird about it, but there are things that I prefer knowing who is learning it, and so that's part of it. And I also think that there's a certain amount of I think there should be a certain amount of challenge for somebody learning something. If you don't face enough challenge, you won't value what you're getting. Likewise, if you face too much challenge, you will walk away. So I'm putting the stuff out there, and the goal for you should be to sort of see how the parts fit. For now, just take them in and learn about them. And then, if you want to pursue it further, let me know. Simple as that.